VID00002. If you'll look up in the upper left-hand corner, how many hours does it say it's going to take us to do this one? It says it's going to take 5 hours. Now on your assignment sheet, it tells you when it's going to be due, but we'll see how much time we have in lab. Remember that assignment sheet is always, it can always be changed. Sometimes we need a little bit more time working on it, so we don't have to stick fast to that date. See if you can find your working papers at the back of your book. It should say Sullivan, and there's quite a few pages that go with it. It should be page 204 in your book.
Oh, the working papers.
Oh, they're at the very back, after 5. They're in chapter 5. And our instructions go all the way to page 219. No, not Sanchez. We're looking for Sullivan. Did I give you the wrong page?
No. So it's about 965. That's 2 points.
Okay. I think that the Sanchez is right before that. If you're just dying to have some extra work to do, Sanchez is a problem that goes from chapter 1 to chapter 12. I usually offer it as extra credit if you think you need it. You can do it on the computer in my accounting lab, or you can do it on paper. You didn't have to start it in chapter 1 when we were doing chapter 1, but you'll have to go back to chapter 1 to start it. It just continues all the way through the book.
The working papers, they go from
I don't know. I didn't
155
pull my
165. 165.
Going 185 pages, right?
to 185 of post-closing counsel. So there's a lot of pages that go with that. I don't know how many are there. Lots.
Did you say we could check it as we go?
Yes. And those of you that did come in late, let me go over that rule again. And those of you that are doing it online, you can still check with me. I will bring the answer key. All right, it's all the transactions. We're going to do the first ones together. I like for you to do several transactions before you post, although we'll post the first ones that I give you today so you can see the procedure to do that. Usually we do the transaction and then we post when we're working on a big problem like this. How do you know that you've posted the transaction?
That's the last thing you do is you write the cross-reference, post-reference.
The account number. So you know where you left off. If you haven't posted, you won't have an account number in there. All right, the first page of Sullivan, it says, this comprehensive review problem requires you to complete the accounting cycle for Sullivan Realty twice. This practice set allows you to review while reinforcing the relationships between all parts of the accounting cycle. By completing 2 cycles, you will see how the ending June balances in the ledger are used to accumulate data in July. First, look at the chart of accounts. Now, we haven't finished chapter 5 yet, but we can still do the journal entries because that's in chapters 1 through 4. When you get to the end of June, that's where we need to have the information from chapter 5, and we'll do 5 on Thursday. But I thought some of you probably already have your chapter 4 homework finished, those 2 worksheets, and then the 3 financial statements for the second problem. So you probably have time to start this. I like to give you things ahead of time so that you can plan when you need to work on it. Right? It's not due for a while. You don't have to have it finished by Thursday. You don't have to have it finished by Tuesday of next week. Right? Let's look at your chart of accounts. Those are the accounts that we're going to use for all of our transactions. Look at the names of those accounts, and if you're not sure what account to use, then refer to the chart of accounts. On the next few pages, we have source documents. And up until now, we've just had written instructions what we were going to do. Here we have a deposit ticket. Here we have a check. Is this a check that we received or a check that we wrote? One that we wrote. It's signed by John Sullivan, and it says Sullivan Realty up in the upper left-hand corner. We have an invoice. We have another invoice from Office Supply Direct. And we have another check.
On the June 4th, we did 2 transactions.
And it has the date, and I'm just going through it quickly until we get through June. I want to read the instructions for June. All right, here's another invoice, here's a deposit ticket, here's a commission report, 2 more checks, another commission report. So it gives us a feeling of what it might really look like or feel like to be in an office where we have actual papers that are coming in. Remember, we have to have a source document to prepare anything in the journal. Now we have to look at all of the transactions for June, not really working through them yet to get to the instructions for June. So if you'll turn to page 212, mine is 212. Is yours 212? Okay. Our instructions, number 1, journalize transactions and post to the ledger accounts. The second step, prepare a trial balance in the first 2 columns of the worksheet and complete the worksheet using the following adjusting data. 1 month's rent expired. It didn't give us an amount. So we're going to have to look at the transaction where we paid the prepaid rent and how many months we paid that rent for. And inventory shows $50 of office supplies remaining. So we'll have to do a calculation to determine what we used. Depreciation on office equipment was $100. And depreciation on automobile was $200. We don't have any adjustment there for the payroll. Step 3, prepare a June income statement, statement of owner's equity, and balance sheet. Now, before you get to those financial statements, I'd like to see your journal entries before you post. I'd like to see your worksheet before you record what we're going to do in Chapter 5. I want to check your work, and I'm not charging you for the checks. You can ask me to check anything before you move to the next step. There's no reason why you cannot have a 100 on Sullivan. I don't give you things to do just to trick you up and to not let you have a good grade. I want you to learn something from this, so if we can find your mistakes and not just have you continue on and then I grade it and just put big purple X's on it. I don't think we learn anything from that. We have to learn by, if the adjustments aren't correct, then let's fix them so that the rest of your practice set is perfect. There's no reason why you can't have a 100. And this is one of the 4 comprehensive problems. Now, I'll have some students that won't turn it in. Go figure. Why would you pay for the class and not do the work? If you have to take the class the 3rd time, you pay double. It's a 3-peat rule. So you don't want to do that. Even if you drop the class, it still counts that you took it the 2nd time. So let's work through this. I'm not going to beg you to turn it in, but on the day that it's due, that's the day that I want it. And we'll come up with that date. I'll probably say we're going to turn it in on whatever Thursday or whatever Tuesday. Not next week. You still have plenty of time to do it, so don't worry about that. Step number 4, and this is what we haven't covered yet, and we'll do that in 5 on Thursday. From the worksheet, journalize and post the adjusting and closing entries, so you can get all the way to there before Thursday if you want to. And then step 5, prepare a post-closing trial balance, and we haven't prepared that yet. We haven't learned how to do that. Then we start with the next month, which is July. So we'll see what the end of the month for June looks like, and then we'll get to do the same thing for July. So then we'll start with July. We have invoices, checks, deposit slips. Okay, and you can keep looking through there until we get to page 219. Rebecca, I have cough drops up here if you want a cough drop. Do you want one?
Sure.
I have to keep one. I just start coughing and then I can't stop. Okay. Then for July, we have a similar set of instructions. Mine's on page 219. It says journalize the transactions in the general journal, page 4, and post to the ledger accounts. Prepare a trial balance in the first 2 columns of the blank fold-out worksheet, and then you have 4 more adjustments to do. So how many worksheets will you turn in? You'll have 2, all right? Then from the worksheet, we're going to prepare a July income statement, statement of owner's equity, and balance sheet. And then we'll journalize the adjusting and the closing entries. And then we'll prepare a post-closing trial balance. Now, if you'll look at the grade sheet, I have it divided for June and July. There are 47 transactions, so I'll be looking at those transactions. There are 23 general ledger accounts. So each one of those is worth a point. Your worksheet for June, your income statement, statement of owner's equity, balance sheet, and post-closing trial balance are each worth 3 points for June, and the same thing for July. And that totals 100. So you know exactly where your grade is coming from. And I do not mind checking your work. All right? Is that clear? I don't mind checking it. But don't wait until you get all the way to the end, and then we're trying to check and you've got mistakes in the first journal entries that you did. You didn't let me check. All right, if you have your working papers out, Let's do the first few transactions together. Miriam, are we still recording?
Yes.
And you should have page 1 of your general journal. That's the page that you need. Our instructions say on June the 1st, John Sullivan opened a real estate office called Sullivan Realty. The following transactions were completed for the month of June. On June 1st, John Sullivan invested $9,000 cash in the real estate agency, along with $4,000 of office equipment. Let's go to the journal. What kind of an entry is this one?
I don't have
Oh, you don't have any pages? What kind of an entry is this one? A compound entry. We have more than 2 accounts. John Sullivan invested cash and office equipment. Our date was June the 1st, and then squeeze the year in there. Cash is over to the left, office equipment over to the left, and our credit, John Sullivan, comma, capital. Make sure that your debits and credits equal. Make sure that you have a clear description of what we did. Initial investment from the owner, is that okay, or did it just need to say initial investment? I think initial investment is okay. Doesn't have to be exactly like mine. You have enough pages to skip a line in between your transactions. It also gives you a place if you make a mistake when we're checking it to put something in there. So skip a line. No account numbers in the post reference until we post that.
maybe a brain fart. Does it need a date underneath the agenda?
Don't I have the date June 1
Oh, okay.
over there on the left?
I mean, 15 to the
Right up here. And then the next one, we'll just put the day. We don't need to write the month again.
So it doesn't need month, ending, or anything like that?
No, not for the journal. It just has the date. It's a chronological list of the transactions in the business. What do we call the journal? The book of what? Original entry. Right? This is where everything that happens in the business, we're going to record it. It's like our financial diary. Are we ready to look at the second one? On June the 1st again, it says we rented and paid 3 months rent in advance to Miller Property for how much? $3,000. Let's skip a line. What's going to be our debit in that transaction? Prepaid rent. Because cash is what?
Credit.
Our credit. All right, there we go. So skip a line. And we just need the day. It's still the 1st. Prepaid rent. And if we weren't sure what that account name officially was, how it was listed, look back at your chart of accounts. They gave you a great chart of accounts to go by. $3,000, $3,000. Rent paid in advance, and I wrote the months. Because when we get ready to make the adjusting entry, it would be nice not to have to go back to the book to find it. We could just look for it in the journal entries. So when we make that adjustment for a month, what's the amount going to be? 1,000. Make sure your debits and credits equal before you go on. This one was sort of easy because it had cash involved. Anytime it has cash, it should be much easier. We receive cash, that's a debit. We pay cash, that's a credit. Let's look at the third transaction. Oh, it's still on June the 1st. Bought an automobile on account, $14,000. What accounts are used? Automobile and accounts payable. Now, if we didn't know that it was automobile, you'd have to look back at the chart of accounts. It could be vehicle, it could be car. Remember on the test, I think I used the word auto. So this one is called automobile, accounts payable, and I use the diagonal, although we're not posting yet to those subsidiary ledgers, and I put the diagonal in the post reference column. Eventually we'll post those twice. I have as a description auto purchased on account. If we know it's accounts payable, did I have to have on account? Probably not. Just purchased auto. If we're purchasing several vehicles, maybe we want to list what kind of vehicle that is if we're going to purchase more than one, especially to get it to match with our depreciation account. Here we just had one that was just called automobile. Now our instructions tell us that we should be posting after each one, but I'm going to let you do the posting. Let's look at the next transaction. It goes to June the 4th. Purchased office supplies from Office Supply Direct for cash, $300. What accounts are used?
Office supplies and cash.
Office supplies and cash. What is cash if we paid cash? Our credit. So our debit then is going to be office supplies. The date was the 4th. Your description could just as easily be purchase supplies. It doesn't have to say for cash because we have cash in the transaction. Are you remembering to skip a line? Just gives you a little place if you make a mistake to fix it. Plus, I think it looks a little neater. Also for that transaction, we have the second source document, which was the check. We don't have to make another transaction for that. This was just two source documents for that transaction. And that takes you through the 5th. We still have 45 minutes. You may continue working on Sullivan if you want, and I can check that for you. You can work on your tutors. You should have 3 and 4 completed. If you haven't finished those, spend the lab time to do that. The only thing you have to do in this room are the tutors. If you prefer to work on Sullivan outside of class, you can do that, but we have about 45 minutes left. Anybody have any questions about Sullivan? No questions, Sharon?
Well, right now it's on the calendar, and I know you said it's subject to change.
Okay.
Will we after spring break?
Yes. Oh, you want to ask me a question? Does it say it's due after spring break? I don't even remember when it's due. I kind of pick about 4 weeks out or 3 weeks out for it to be turned in. So maybe we'll pick it up before spring break, and I'll give you the next one to have over spring break. I don't know, sometimes over spring break, people like to work ahead. Sometimes people don't like to do any work over spring break. So, you know, I like to give it out. I took my Canvas class here on campus, and I think the instructor was writing the class as we went along. It was a 4-week class, so we had 4 modules. Well, it was during the Maymester, and I didn't have a class. I didn't start teaching until summer school. I wanted it all right now, so I could work ahead and get it finished. She gave it to us week at a time, which drove me crazy. All of my classes I usually have completed for the 16 weeks. My Peachtree, my QuickBooks class, it's all out there. The quizzes are open the whole semester, so I have students that are on Chapter 6, students that are on Chapter 3, which is the chapter we're really working on. So I may give it to you. I don't know. I'm a worker over spring break, so some of you might be. Some of you may say, I'm not doing it until we come back. All right? I just want to give it to you so that you can plan ahead. I don't know when I said that Sullivan is due. Does it say on there?
Well, during the week of the 4th and the 6th, it says it's due next week. Well, next week obviously is spring break, so that
Okay.
would be due
Yeah.
the week after spring break.
So we'll set the date. We'll set the date. And I'll see how everybody's doing, and then we'll set the date.
On the June 1st where you're doing the prepaid rent,
Yes.
do you not put the Miller Property Management as a side, like a backslash for who you paid it to?
Probably not, because it wasn't an accounts payable or accounts receivable. It's our expense for rent. Okay. Didn't we pay for it with cash?
Well, a check, yeah.
Yeah. If we paid for it or did a promise to pay, then we'd have to have it. Okay, good point, though. Any other questions before we turn off the recorder? They might have the same questions. Okay, go ahead and turn it off. Thanks, Mary.